Here for news and politics. Molly O'Brien was live at 3 o'clock with Lifestyle, talking with the Gloria Gemma Foundation, talking about marathons, and a really interesting music guest. So if you didn't get the opportunity to check it out, be sure to catch it afterwards. Just wanted to break some breaking news for you here. Go Local just reported John DePietro is out at WADK. You can read that piece on golocalprov.com. See the details there. Be sure to check it out. But of course, after the show and after news and politics, my first guest is around the corner. He's been here before, Dwayne Keys with the South Providence Neighborhood Association. Come on in.
Hello.
Welcome back.
Yes, thank you.
Nice to see you. You know the drill.
Yeah, hi everyone. How's everyone doing?
It's Friday afternoon.
Yes, it's time for this weekend to start off.
Start off. The sun is shining after a couple of days here of much needed rain.
Yes.
Apparently we needed it, but I'll take the sunshine.
Yeah, absolutely. And what a way to start off the weekend with sunshine.
Absolutely. And what a way to start off with you in here, bringing us all the news from the SPNA, because last night you had an important meeting regarding the continuation of addressing abandoned properties.
Absolutely. So we have been doing what's called our Blighted Properties series. And so it started off back in July when we have representatives from Rhode Island Housing, City of Providence, the Providence Preservation Society, and SWAP to give their perspective about abandoned properties in general. But a main focus was on what's called the Barbara Jordan 2 housing units within amongst Somerset and the area near Trinity Square. And so a lot of people, not just in the neighborhood, but beyond in Providence and Rhode Island, are very interested in what's going to happen with those properties. And there's been a lot of rumors, there's been some announcements that have caused confusion. And I talked to Councilwoman Harris after all that came out, and I said, you know what, I think it's best that you come back as we continue on this conversation. I think the next part of that continuing conversation is you, Councilman Aponte, who have been involved in particularly Barbara Jordan 2 from the beginning, give the history, the perspective, the understanding of what was going on. I think if we have that information first, then we have a much clearer understanding of what's happening, what's going on now, and then we as neighbors are in a better position to give our input as to what we think is important or could work in terms of the future of Barbara Jordan 2. So that was yesterday's meeting, which was Councilwoman Harris was just by herself. We had an update on the vacant properties proposed ordinance, which we had also had on our agenda last month. So before we got an update from a member from the City of Providence regarding the vacant properties proposed ordinance. So that was an ordinance that had a public meeting last month. We actually spoke out against that meeting, not SPNA, but individuals, myself included, because the original draft did not have a process for distributing the properties once they were acquired. And so eminent domain, given the history of how, when it comes to low income and communities of color, how there's a history of land being taken from us, we wanted to make sure that it was very clear that we were not going to have that same process here. So we wanted to be very open. So they included in this updated proposed ordinance, making sure that there was local hiring, minority business, women business enterprise requirements, as well as who gets the properties in question, who's going to be the end owner. Is it going to be owner-occupied? Is it going to be an investor who's going to charge rent that's going to be not affordable, nor anyone who's particularly low income can afford it to live in? So that was the first update in which we learned about this upcoming community conversation, which we'll get to.
But we will get to. So you provided the input for what you're looking for from the ordinance. Where do things currently stand?
So basically, I know that now that went back to the City Council, and I believe that that's going to be in one of the upcoming sessions for a full vote.
Okay.
At one of the City Council committees, that's when then there was more vetting of the process. After we had given our input and had met with members of the planning department, they did make those updates, and then there was even talk of some additional additional port components. So Councilman Aponte talked about maybe creating a commission within this body that would make the selection of who's going to be the developer, who would then get that property developed, and how make sure they were, in terms of enforcement, meeting the requirements of the ordinance. So that's where we stand. We're waiting for the City Council to give final approval.
Okay, so waiting to act on that. You will be there at the meetings,
Absolutely.
making sure.
Yes.
So what happens? I mean, it seems like the green light moving forward. There doesn't seem like there's a sense that this could get derailed and sort of taken off the table.
Absolutely. No. Basically, we're moving forward with that. We were content, and we're just basically going to move on with the results.
So you talk about all the work that SPNA has done, bringing in local stakeholders to the process, and then hearing about another meeting with the administration upcoming. So wanted to bring you in. You're doing all this work with the council members. So talk to us about this latest development.
So again, after we had our meeting, because one of the things we came to the conclusion was with Barbara Jordan too, you know what, let's create our own survey the residents, get their input, their ideas, learn what they know about what could work best to rehabilitate those properties. And so SBNA, we're basically going to finalize our survey, distributed that survey, and over the next month and a half, we're going to just basically make sure to collect the results. And if they can't show up to that meeting on December 6th, which is going to be this workshop style meeting, that's where we're going to have everyone in a room where you can either bring it there. We're going to collect that in terms of organized style format. We're working with SWAP on this particular forum, and then from there SWAP is going to publish this report that's going to say, yes, the neighbors have said, based on now that we have this information, what do we want to see for the future of that property? And we're going to use our resources, our knowledge, our talents and abilities in terms of presenting that to whether it's Rhode Island Housing, the City Council, whichever body that needs this information to know where we stand and what we think is best for that portion of our neighborhood.
This is not the first time that you have done a survey. You guys are very big on the empirical data, showing what the neighbors, the stakeholders, the businesses in the community really have to say about it. We had you in here with St. Joe's not too long ago. So, you know, here you are really taking the reins as the SPNA to get this information. You know, should the city be, you know, looking to you to say, oh, well, thank you for this information?
You would think, and definitely with Councilwoman Harris, she, as well as Councilman Aponte, because we cover both areas that are part of their respective wards, they have been very appreciative. And so many of the other local organizations definitely have been appreciative. Now, yes, you would think that the mayoral administration would say the same thing. And so when we received this announcement yesterday, didn't see it on the news today, myself, you know, individually, and then other members of the Coalition Neighbors for Revitalization, which is an extension of the Providence Youth Cabinet, in which SBNA is a member organization. We basically partner up and teamed up with them because they were already addressing the abandoned properties matter. They have been maintaining a list. They have been coming up with stories. Yes, they have the success story of 93 Superior Street as a case study, which the mayor was at back in August and had actually saw the work, and he has this information. So we've already have a proven model using our own local resources with Neighbors for Revitalization, West Elmwood Housing in place to show this is how we can move forward with addressing vacant, abandoned properties.
So tell viewers here, again, this announcement yesterday, I believe a little out of left field for you?
Yes, so we didn't even know about the community conversation. We weren't even we were invited, like the whole general public, with the flyer that's already in place, in which we're going to have this group based out of Tennessee called Neighborhood Preservation Incorporation, NPI, that's going to come to here to talk to us about how we can address our abandoned property issue. So I'm sitting here this morning, and myself, we've been talking, okay, let me just break this down. And I think everyone's saying, well, what's the big deal? Let's bring experts outside. I have no problem bringing experts outside. However, here's the situation. You have volunteer, tax-paying residents who vote, who have been giving of their own free time to work on this issue. We have already done the investment. We have already done the research. We already have the results. We have already told the mayoral administration, along with our other elected officials, here is a model for you to adapt, and it's all within using our local resources. And you then, in turn, without even inviting us to be a part of coordinating this event, just make an announcement and say, I'm going to have someone else that we are hiring. It's not just, oh, we're bringing in. We are hiring. You're using taxpayer dollars, so that we pay for to bring somebody else outside who doesn't know the ins and outs of our neighborhood, our community, to come and tell us how to address an issue that we already know and have already told the mayoral administration. And no one thinks that that's wrong.
Okay, before I'm going to bring you over here a little bit closer so we can talk more about this. So, again, they've hired this outside consultant already. I mean, is this riddled with politics?
This is not my form of politics. I would say that. This is not my form. My form is obviously, if we already have in place, we already have our talents and our resources here, well, I'm going to call somebody else who has no idea of all the intricacies to tell me something that I already know. All right, we already got this done. So what's the reason behind it? Now my question is, why is it that you are dismissing me, the voter, and my opinion? Because stuff like this is what we're talking about. It's like, it's not going away. We were insulted. We felt disrespected. But I will tell you, we will remember this at election time when it's time to cast our ballot.
So you've got the meeting coming up that you were told along with everybody else when you've already done this work. What's your mindset going into this meeting?
So I will actually say I have another meeting because I have a meeting for work. My schedule is we plan in advance. Had you told us maybe a month ago about this meeting, we could have been organized, better prepared. So I'm not surprised that we get less than, a 2-week notice on this meeting. Nevertheless, I individually will not be there, but I know that there are going to be other residents, members of SBNA, Neighbors for Realization, who are going to plan to attend. Now, what they say or what comes out of it depends upon what's going to be presented. So if they're coming in and they're here to tell me what we need to do, you're going to see a reaction, which I don't think is going to be very favorable. So the question is going to be, what's the agenda? What's the purpose of them being here? Are they here to just present their model, or are they here to lecture us? Because when I read it, it's almost as if they're coming here to tell me, again, to do what I already know what to do, how to do.
So talk with us. We're here end of October 2017. We're pretty much, in sports parlance, we're in the third quarter of the mayoral administration. Fourth quarter is quickly approaching. Mayor Lorza really ran on the platform of addressing abandoned properties, and you've got the vantage point from South Providence. How would you grade him? I mean, the platform and the campaign was, we're going in, we're going to clean them up. Is 3 years not enough time to address the issue? We're having this meeting again in November 2017. Talk with me about your thoughts on where things stood from sort of the promises to where we are today.
I think the issue has been more the communication. So if I had to give a grade, I would say a D+. And I give that grade not so much because of the end results, because if you had been more than open, honest, direct, and transparent about the reality of the process, I think people would expect it was going to be a long drawn-out process. When we get, for example, the Every Home program, which I like to call the No Home program, you have that scenario and that situation where you came in making all these promises, but now the realities come in. You have to go through housing court. You can't just take someone's property. You can't just go off and do what you want, but you campaign and promise on the premise that you were going to be able to do this, when in reality, it was a much more complex issue. And that has been my challenge and my frustration as an individual has been, you're trying to bring basic solutions to a complex problem. You can't do that.
Yes.
You can't just say one thing and we're just going to go ahead and do this, and then now like you said, 2-3 years later, well, what happened to that? Because all of the realities that go into that situation, which you didn't communicate to residents, are now being seen. And so, okay, we're going to have another conversation about abandoned properties. So then the question is, well, what about your Every Home program? What are the results of that? What's in writing? So now we're coming to, no, I don't think that was effective. I think it was more about a communication. I also question who's advising the mayor in terms of these policies and how they're going about it. What's your thought process? Because when I think of, applying logic and critical thinking, it doesn't make sense to me. I could be wrong, but I am really thinking about the process and what we're doing and what makes sense. And even at yesterday's meeting, I said that, let's be realistic. For all that we want with Barbara Jordan too, if we're dealing with HUD and we're dealing with Secretary Carson and what we've heard, we have to set the tone that although we have all these ambitious ideas, a lot of that may not happen because the reality of the federal government has to come into play, and we have to be prepared for that could be the result as well.
Well, as I said, wanted to see you here in studio today because I knew you had a lot of reaction, both with what you had talked about at last night's meeting, hearing about the administration's upcoming meeting. But we've had you here in studio before. There's a lot more going on with the SPNA.
Yes.
Well, what do we expect from you in the coming weeks?
Oh, my goodness. So I know that our secretary, Ava, is going to be presenting at our November meeting to talk about food security. Okay. So she's pulling in Urban Greens and some other groups that focus on that area. Because when we talk about hunger in the neighborhood, there's a lot of issues in terms of food costs. So when we talk about living in South Providence the cost of living, the cost of food. Are we really taking advantage of all that's available within our neighborhood? So she's going to give that excellent presentation.
Excellent.
And again, in lieu of not having a December meeting, we're going to have that workshop. So that's going to be coming in. But yeah, essentially what's happening is that we are moving forward. The reality is we're moving into 2018. It's an election year. And so that's going to dominate the conversation, which is we have a lot of things that we want to see. Can we rely on 4 more years of what we have? Or are we really going to have to think about, okay, what do we want as a neighborhood? And then what are the proposals that we want to see? And then what makes sense for us? So that's really going to be the assessment. And so, we are a nonpartisan, organization, but the reality is city government is key to our neighborhood's success or failure. And so we have to take that in as individuals, as voters, we're going to be assessing that.
Now, as a C3, you can have community forums. You can't endorse candidates. You can't actively
correct.
lobby. That's the C4 realm. But as you said, we are approaching 2018. We do know that Kobe Dennis has thrown his hat in the ring for the mayoral race. How soon in 18 do you think you'll be having those community forums in which you'll be inviting declared candidates to come in and sort of answer those community questions?
So, if it were up to me, I actually would want to have it as early as March. Let's go spring into action. I would. But the reality is I think you have until at least like June or July to really
formally declare. Yep.
So that is the challenge, that if we were to have a forum, we would have to wait until really that time to have that. But for me, that's not stopping us, if not having a full candidates forum, can we have a topic forum? And that's one of the things that we have been doing when it comes to neighborhood association has been, SBNA. We're going to talk about this particular organization or topic or issue. We can still do what we have to do and invite those who are wanting to know the climate, as I've been hearing that term. They want to know what the climate is of the neighbors.
Yes.
So they can hear and get the pulse of what we are thinking of. But at the same time, my frustration has been, you've had access to this all this time. Why are you coming in the election year to get the pulse when you could have been checking it this whole time? And so for me individually, Dwayne Keys, I have said, if I haven't seen from you or heard from you or got involved in 2017, don't come to me in 2018.
too little, too late.
Yeah, it
says
is.
Dwayne.
Yes.
But wanted to bring folks, again, up to speed because we've heard so much about the city addressing abandoned properties, but also the SPNA specifically with the blighted properties. So wanted to sort of let viewers know kind of what's going on both at the community level, at the city level, how there's a little friction, and we'll see what happens moving forward, but wanted to bring it right to you in the studio. So Dwayne,
thank you.
I appreciate it as always. I'll let you go around the corner.
Yes, goodbye everyone.
Dwayne is wishing you a happy weekend. Dwayne Keys with the South Providence Neighborhood Association talking about their meeting last night on what they've been working with in addressing neighborhood issues, and then hearing from the administration about an upcoming meeting, bringing in an outside consultant. Dwayne had a few things to say about that. We've had him in here before to bring it right to you, so I appreciate him coming in here to the studio. We're going to take a quick break, so don't go anywhere.